Welcome to the 13 Comics of Halloween.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the 13 Comics of Halloween. And this time we're doing Eerie #1. Now, for all you don't know, Eerie was concurrent and from the same company as Creepy. So at the same time Creepy was coming out, Eerie, I don't know if it was like, hey, this is doing great, Creepy's doing awesome, let's double down and make a second Creepy one. That's a little bit different. It does have a different format and whatnot, but it still has the same concept. It's an anthology that's got multiple stories in each issue, and it's a magazine format, so they can do more fucked up stuff in it. So
Yeah.
But this has all the same artists and everything as Creepy. It's got like Frank Frazetta and Steve Ditko and Jack Cole and all these people you know, and same writers and stuff too. So, you know, it's got some really good stuff in here. Although the only my only gripe is they didn't say who did what in it on what issue.
Yeah, like they still in the Creepy, they still introduced like this one, and they had the little bit of the credits. But this one, they put all the credits in the beginning of the magazine, and then they were just like, "Here's the comics," and you're like, "Oh, okay."
And that's it. Yeah, like there was no,
At least in the anthology, the way they put it together. Now.
Yeah, maybe in the magazine they said, "Oh, this story is from this person" or whatnot, but they were just like, this whole book, which has like issues 1 through 5, had all these different artists on it, and it's like, well, I'd like to know who was who. But
how do I go forward and pick out?
yes, like obviously I could pick out Frazetta, but you know, or like someone else, but you know, some of them you're like, I just like, that's really cool art, and I'm not as familiar. I'd like to know who that was, kind of thing.
Too bad.
Yeah, too bad. It's one of these people.
Eerie.
Yeah, it's a question. Yeah, so the other thing about this is it's got 3 stories instead of 5, which is kind of nice. It seemed like a good amount. Like I got my fill, and they were a little bit longer, I think, than the other stories. They were just like, instead of 5 pages, they were 7 or 8, and so you only needed 3 to fill up the same amount of space. And that also meant probably they didn't have to pay as many people per issue and stuff. And it was also, you're getting like the same amount of money for 3 writers and artists instead of 5. So I'm sure that played something into it. But the first one of these, first story in this is called The Image of Bluebeard. And this was interesting because we just read Fables, and I didn't know who Bluebeard was in that comic.
Yeah, before that one.
Yeah, before that comic, I never heard of the origin or the tall tale or whatever of Bluebeard. And apparently it was something well known because this comic is about that same fable.
Yeah, this is going to show you we are uncultured swine, sir.
Yes, pretty much. Pretty much. I'm like, wow, I'm dumb. Apparently all these people knew this, and enough to make a story where you already know the setup as a reader, as a child in the 60s or 70s or whatever. So, but yeah, basically it starts off right away with a woman being dead in a shed and, like, I guess hacked to death with an axe or something, but she's hanging there. So I don't know how she was hanging, if her head was cut off, but maybe from the torso or something. They don't show that
under
part
the
of
arms or something, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Also, this is black and white, so you know it's not super graphic as far as color and stuff, but it's graphic as far as you get to see like people getting stabbed and stuff and whatnot. But yeah, so this in France, this detective finds another woman. He's like, "Sacre bleu, another woman!" Like, you know, whatever they say over there. And
Wow.
and then yeah, so like
No offense to our international listeners.
No. I mean, this is all just having funsies. So, so there's apparently a killer that's going around that they think is Bluebeard,
The bearded man.
and they know that this guy has killed lots of women. And then we cut to, so several weeks later, some newlyweds, and they're moving into a new place. And I thought this was like really funny the way they described this. So this dude is older, but you know, they show they show, like, I guess a couple weeks before this or whenever they started dating, how like the mother of the bride was like, "Well, you're no spring chicken. You're like pretty ugly. So like, I know he's older, but you should probably, you know, go with him because
he's got money.
Yeah, he
And it's him or nobody. I mean, like, nobody's going to be coming knocking.
Yeah, no one's going to want some plain wife like you, which is basically the meanest thing you could say to a daughter as a mom. And so she goes with him, and it doesn't seem like they're terribly like the only reason why she's going with him is because he's got money or something. But like they probably don't know each other too well if what happens later freaks her out so much. But basically, they moved into his house in the middle of his lands, and like he's in the middle of nowhere.
Land surveying job.
Yeah, they don't really. They just say like he's got to be gone for long periods of time, and that kind of leaves her hanging out here, and she gets bored, and she's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, like this isn't cool. Like, why am I by myself all the time? And I thought we would be like together and on your land. And he's like,
yeah,
I have a job, woman. I can't be here all the time. But then he starts to spend a lot of time in his like work shed outside. And she's like, what? Like, this is ridiculous. So she
don't bother me. I'm in there. I'm working on something.
Yeah. And she's like, fine, I won't bother you. But she starts spending time in his library a lot. And she finds The Legend of Bluebeard. And it reminds her a lot of the reports that have been going around in the area of women being murdered, specifically on like, newlywed women murdered by someone, a man with a beard. And they show like the pictures of the women and the men, and he looks very similar to I guess the art in this book. I'm sure it wasn't an actual picture, but it was like, whatever the artist rendition looked a lot like her husband. And she's like, oh my God. And so
my husband.
It goes through the whole Bluebeard myth, or legend, which is basically this guy Bluebeard marries a woman. He's like, you can go into any room in this castle but this one. And of course she wants to go to that one. She opens the door one day when she like steals his keys and sneaks off. She opens the door, finds all his previous wives hanging in the cellar with their heads cut off. She tries to like hide it, but he finds out that she did look in there, and he's like, fine, if you're so nosy, guess what? You get to be one of them. And so he cuts off her head and throws her in there. So then she's like, that sounds just like my husband. Like, or at least it looks a lot like him, like he's been so coy and gone a lot, and like I don't know.
He's out in his shed all the time now.
Yeah, I bet.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, so
I've made up my mind.
She freaks out. She also finds like 4 other marriage licenses, so she's like, "I'm the 5th. This makes perfect sense. So he must be Bluebeard." And she tries to like find out by like sneaking by and like knocking on the door to like bother him, basically. And he's like, "I told you, like, leave me alone. I'm doing something special for you." And like,
yeah, you're gonna have a gift coming real soon.
Yeah, real soon. And so she peeks in the window and sees him using his axe, and she's like, "I knew it. It is him. He is Bluebeard." And so he leaves one day again, like the next day, and she's like, "Oh, don't worry. It's have a good day at work, honey." And he's like, when I come home, I'll show you my little surprise that I've made for you in the guest house, but you make sure you stay out of there until then. And she's like, "Oh, yes, of course." And so she's preparing for him. She's like, "I got to protect myself against this monster when he comes back." So she grabs a knife from the kitchen and I guess waits all day until he comes back. And then he comes back from work and he's like, "Finally, I'm sorry I'm late, my dearest, but it's time for your surprise. Are you ready?" And she's like, "First, I have a surprise for you." And she like stabs him in the chest.
Yeah, like he's coming like in like up the entryway, and she's like greeting him outside the house, and then they're like, yeah, he's like, "Come on," and going to embrace her, whatever, and then she's like, "Ha!"
Yeah, and she stabs him right in the heart, basically.
Yeah,
kills him. I assume they don't really show like him dead.
He falls back, and he's got a gigantic knife sticking out of the middle.
Yeah, right in the middle of his chest, and blood's all over the place. And then she calls the cops to be like, "He's here. The killer's here." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Bluebeard," or she's like, "Bluebeard, the murderer in Paris." And he's like, "Madam, surely you knew. Bluebeard was caught 2 days ago and he confessed." And she's like, "That's impossible. I'll show you the bodies. You have the wrong man." And she takes him to the cellar where he was working. The shed, I mean.
The shed, yeah.
And as she opens the door, we see there's not bodies in there, but like little boxes with animals that he had been collecting. So she had like a menagerie of animals to keep her company.
Yep.
And,
he was just
trying
doing
to be
something nice.
Trying to be a good husband. But those women, they just aren't happy when you're not around all the time.
No, I mean, if you got to try to keep secrets from them, they're eventually going to see a book in your library about murderers and be like, "Oh, well, this is obviously reading material for him of how to be a murderer. So I've got to kill him before he kills me.
Yes. And
as the old story goes.
Yeah. So all you first newlyweds or people thinking about getting married, remember this story and remember it well.
And don't judge a book in your significant other's library until you talk to him about it.
Yeah. There you go. But what if he was Bluebeard and then,
Well, then she should have thought about stabbing him in the chest first.
Whatever. Just, how about you get to know the person you're marrying before you marry them? And then they're not evil. But anyway, the second story in this is called Death Plane. And this was a weird one, I thought. But basically, it's World War I times. We got biplanes fighting biplanes over the trenches in World War I. And yes, perfect, John. Do the sound effects while I read it. And it's the Red Baron. But yeah, so there's there's planes that have been going down all day long, actually like for a long time now. And these soldiers look up and they're like, hey, there's one of ours shooting down one of those murderous Krauts. And although I don't think they called them Krauts in World War I, but whatever. They're shooting them down. And then he's like, wait a second, that's not one of our planes. That's weird. And then they find out as they talk to their like head person that this plane, this unmarked plane, is actually shooting down both sides. And it's very weird. Like, we don't know who it is, but basically, it's killed 7 German planes and 6 Allied planes. And they don't know why it's doing it, but they're going to get it, goddammit. And they like they come up with a plan. They make a truce with the German, war or Air Force team or whatever. I don't know how they like send messages to the Germans about this, but somehow they have a committee where they're like, truce for a second. We need to talk about this one plane that's killing all of our planes. So basically they set up like an armada of planes or whatever. I don't know what is it called? Not armada. I guess it's armada. I don't know. I thought armada was ships, but whatever. Some kind of like big event where you're going to have like planes from the Germans and planes from the Allied, and they're both going to attack.
Take them on.
Take them on. Yeah, exactly. And there's one guy that's like kind of focused on this section. He's chasing this plane that's taking out all these people in this armada during this battle. And he's like, oh, I can't see him. He's like, keeps going in between the sun and my guns, and I can't.
Clouds,
and I can't get a good shot. And so then all of a sudden that plane is right behind him and shoots him down. And then as he crashes, his spirit.
He's crashing. He's like, and then he's like, wait a minute, I'm not crashing. I'm in a plane. I'm in that plane. It's a ghost plane. That's why nobody can shoot it down. The bullets just like go through it.
Yeah. And whoever it killed last is now the new
ghost pilot. They'll never know who the original one is, but that's basically how the spirit works now.
Yeah, so like this ghost plane shot down 2 people already during this one battle. So that means that every time someone gets shot down, they become the new pilot. Then so one of the guys gets shot down from the same battle. Then 10 seconds later is like, and now I know where I'm at, and I don't want to be in this ghost world anymore. It shoots another person down, and that person becomes the ghost plane. Then this third guy that we've been following, he gets shot down, and he realizes it, and now he's like, I must replace it with another. Like, he's so freaked out, and he gets it right away, like, what's going on. I thought it was very, like, weird and unbelievable.
It was a really quick, like, whoop, and that's a quick wrap-up.
Yeah, and I think because this last story was a little bit longer, they just wanted, like, a quick, like, I don't know, it was a twist, but it wasn't really, like, spectacular or anything. So,
yeah, it was weird.
Yeah. And then this last story is called The Invitation. And basically this doctor, his name is Dr. John, arrives at a house, a big manor, or what's it called? Chateau. So it's in France, I guess. He arrives at a chateau and he's like, I received a letter advertising that your village needed a doctor, so I'm here. And said you would, provide the lodging. And he's like, yeah.
He said he's looking for Baron von Renfield?
Yeah, and so he's like, yeah, come on in. That's weird because Baron von Renfield's been dead for over a century. And it's odd that, how could you have a letter from him or whatever? So
this village is forsaken. This place, these lands are not good.
Yeah, and so basically he then tells this legend of these sinister walls of the chateau. And we find out there was this dude, Baron Renfield, and he was he's on a carriage going through the middle of this godforsaken area, and his wagon loses its wheel, and then he's looking around trying to find some help, and he stumbles upon this area where there's all these vampires and ghouls, and they're like, finally some like blood for us to drink, and he's like, oh my god, I can't believe it, like please don't kill me. And like he finds a well. I mean, that's like in the middle of nowhere, he finds a well, so it's kind of like, what the fuck. But like, that's basically, he goes to this well, and then there's all these like people that are around it, but they're all vampires.
Yeah.
And so
he's like, let's make a deal.
Yeah, he's
if you don't eat me, I will bring people to you to eat, and your couple.
I'm very popular, so like, let me just send out some letters. And the funny thing is, like, this would take months, right? If you sent letters, it would take months at this time period for like people to come, right? So
the vampires are patient.
Okay, they're patient vampires. So yeah. Basically, he sends some letters, and he does it to people that he doesn't like. So the first letter he sends out is to this asshole who cheated with his wife, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, like I know that we had some shit go down back in the past, but like, why don't you come to my new house?" And
he's like, "I'm probably gonna have a ball. Like, it'll be fun. Come on up."
Yeah, and so that guy comes. He's like, "Man, I'm so glad we could, rekindle our friendship. It's so." Bros before hoes, buddy, like I'm glad like we could settle this, and then when he turns around, Baron von Renfield is hitting him in the face with a club, and right away the vampires attack him. And then he's like, cool, like let me send out my next letter. And so he sends out his next letter to, I believe it was
like a blacksmith.
It was the blacksmith, I think, who made the wheel that failed his carriage. So
that asshole making faulty wheels.
Yes.
I know how to get back at him.
Exactly. So he invites him over. Exactly. What kind of customer service is this bullshit? So he sends that Baron a message. The Baron or the blacksmith comes, and the blacksmith is like, your invitation? And he's like, oh my god, vampires. Like so he gets
wasting
right
no time.
away. Yeah, just hey, right away, vampires are there. So they eat this blacksmith, and then so now he's got two, he said he would bring him 4 people basically, and he's got 2 down, and now he's like, wait, what am I like, I'm out of people basically, like who else can I send stuff to?
It looks suspicious that people are coming to his place and then disappearing, so
yeah, so they don't want to come out, and he's trying to figure out like who he can send letters to. And basically it's been too long, and the vampires come and they knock on the door, and they're like, we're here for your like invitation. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, like basically you said you were going to bring us people and you didn't, so like we're going to make you one of us. And then they turn him into vampires. And it's funny because the people that are attacking him are the people that he brought there.
Yeah, he's like, oh, wait a minute, my old friend, you're a vampire too?
Yeah. So they turned everybody into vampires, and then it cuts back to nowadays where that doctor's talking to this mysterious fella in this chateau, and he's like, wait, what happened to the ending? You left it out.
Yeah, what happened to the Baron?
And he's like, oh, can't you guess? I'm Baron von Renfield, and now you're going to be our last guest here. And so basically they eat the doctor, and that's it. This was the only one I thought was a little bit hard to tell sometimes what was going on with the art. Yeah,
because we were going to talk about this before. You said the art kind of gets too detailed for the small panel, with the large word bubbles.
So sometimes it was hard to tell what was going on exactly. So, but it's a creepy story, I guess. So, what on that note, is there anything we missed or anything you want to cover?
No, I mean this one was a kind of a short, sweet, like you said, a little nitpicky that they didn't like put specifically who the artists were before them,
writers and stuff.
But they were still fun little reads.
Yeah. So, what would you give this one, John?
It was a solid read. I enjoyed them all. The middle one was the Death Plane.
Yeah,
a little lackluster, but I like the other two. They were fun.
Yeah,
so I'm gonna give it a 6 as well.
All right, yeah, I'm gonna give this one a 6 as well. Well, I'm gonna give this one a 5. It was perfectly readable, but there was because there's only 3 issues in it, there was less to pick from that you could make it a higher grade or whatever. So while the art was good on the third one, like we said, sometimes it was hard to figure out what was going on because it was so detailed or trying to be so detailed in such small panels, and everything is black and white, so there's so much ink on the page. Sometimes it was hard to tell what was going on. And then And then, like you said, Death Plane was like, all right, that's weird.
All right.
So, but the two stories on either side of Death Plane were good stories, but sometimes the art was a little hard to read on the last one. So, I gave it a 5, you gave it a 6, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
On the next spooky one.
Bye.